The galaxy was not quiet. It was never quiet. Even in the dark between the stars, the hum of transmissions, the whisper of encrypted trade codes, and the pulse of navigational beacons filled the void with a symphony of civilization. But one day, without warning, the music stopped. It began in the rimward colonies, those fragile outposts of humanity scattered across the frontier. The colonies were young, daring things, planted like stubborn seeds in soil no one else wanted. Their comms relays were routine, their pings regular as heartbeats. Then came the silence. No distress call, no garbled static, just absence. Entire settlements fell mute, one after another, as though swallowed whole by the void. The Galactic Council noticed, of course. They noticed, and they turned away. "We will not intervene," their declaration rang from their great halls on Cytherian. Prime. 1,000 species with 1,000 excuses, cloaked in diplomacy and cowardice. The human frontier is beyond our sphere of concern. Their troubles are not ours. But we knew better. It was not neglect. It was betrayal. On Earth, the news was carried in fragments, grainy transmissions from scout ships, scattered reports of abandoned stations, a creeping dread that gnawed at every household. Families waited for messages from loved ones that never came. Cities fell into silence as people gathered around screens, staring at the empty feed of stars. At first, there was hope. Surely someone would act. The trade hegemony, the Aurelian, fleets, even the Council itself. Humanity had shed blood in their wars, sent sons and daughters to die in the name of alliances that stretched across the spiral arm. Surely the galaxy would not abandon them now, but the weeks stretched into months. The stars gave no answer. The colonies remained silent, and Earth understood at last. They were alone, and hunted. The first ship returned wrecked, limping, on broken engines, its hull scarred by weapons that did not belong to raiders or pirates. Survivors spoke in fevered whispers of shadows moving through the void, fleets without banners, machines without voices, cold mechanical precision carved through human settlements, leaving nothing but burned ground and dead comms. The galaxy called them unidentified hostiles. We called them the Silence. And still the Council turned away. Admiral Kalen Vey watched the broadcasts with a face carved from stone. His office aboard the Resolute overlooked Earth from orbit, its oceans, shining like molten sapphire against the void. Behind his eyes burned an anger he could no longer contain. He had seen this before. The apathy of great powers, the indifference of allies. He had fought for the Council once, years ago, when humanity was a fledgling member of their galactic order. He remembered the promises of unity, of shared defense, of trust between species. Now, those promises were ashes. "The Council believes we will beg," he said, his voice a low growl as he addressed the gathered admirals and ministers on the warship's hollow table. "They believe we will collapse into ourselves and wait for death. They believe humanity is too fractured, too weak to fight alone." He leaned forward, his eyes hard as steel. They are wrong. The decision did not come easily. Earth's fleets were small compared to the great powers. Its armies, though fierce, were spread thin. But the Silence had already declared war, whether spoken or not. Humanity could either fade into the quiet, void, or burn so brightly that the galaxy could not ignore them. The first strike came at Epsilon Ridge, a frontier station thought lost, swallowed in the wave of muteness. Recon drones showed no life signs, no transmissions, nothing. But when Task Force Orion dropped from FTL into the system, they did not find an empty station. They found a graveyard. Ships drifted with hulls punctured and scorched. Entire decks had been carved open with surgical precision. The station itself was gutted, its core still glowing faintly like the last breath of a dying fire. And there, around the ruins, weighted the silence. The enemy's ships were unlike anything human eyes had seen. Angular shadows, cold and jagged, their surfaces rippling with strange glassy light. No engines flared, no signals transmitted. They moved with a calm, predatory grace, like hunters circling wounded prey. The moment humanity arrived, the trap closed. Narration turned to fire. The void lit up with the blaze of war. Human warships unleashed salvos of missiles, beams of white-hot plasma, streaks of railgun fire that tore across the blackness. The silence answered in kind. Lances of crystalline energy sliced through hulls, as though they were paper, cutting vessels in half with surgical indifference. The Resolute herself roared into battle, her guns blazing with fury. Admiral Vey stood upon her bridge, watching as his crews fought with the desperation of cornered wolves. Every order was sharp, decisive, unrelenting. Every hit the fleet took only hardened his resolve. "Target their cores," he commanded, watching the strange, crystalline light pulse within the enemy's frames. "They bleed light, make them bleed it all," and bleed they did. Human weapons tore through their hulls, shattering them into shards that scattered like dying stars. For the first time, the silence faltered. But the cost was terrible. Half the task force never returned. The station was lost. The dead outnumbered. The living. Still, the message was clear. Humanity would not go quietly. When the reports reached the Council, their halls buzzed with whispers. They had expected Earth to cower, to remain still and silent until the tide swept them away. Instead, they had answered with fire. The other civilizations watched with unease, their leaders unwilling to risk involvement, their people secretly admiring the audacity of humanity's defiance. The galaxy turned its back. Others fell silent, but humanity, broken, bleeding, furious, rose. In defiance, and in the shadows of the void, the silence took notice. The war had begun. The silence of the void was deceptive. Outwardly, the galaxy appeared unchanged. Trade convoys still drifted through secure lanes, council sessions carried on in their marble halls, and entire civilizations pretended nothing had shifted. Yet, beneath the calm, rumors spread like cracks through glass. Rumors of human fleets moving into the dark. Rumors of battles fought in abandoned systems. Rumors of machines that killed without speaking. The Council dismissed it all. Isolated conflicts. Raiders, nothing more. Their words echoed with the brittle calm of denial. But in hushed tones, across frontier worlds and hidden channels, one truth burned brighter with each passing day. Humanity had not yielded. Admiral Kalen Vey stood at the Resolute's command dais, the tactical map of 3 systems shimmering before him. Each was marked red, lost to the silence. They had consumed whole colonies, erasing their presence so thoroughly that not even ruins remained. Yet here and there, faint sparks of resistance showed. Outposts still holding, fleets still fighting. Vey's gaze hardened. "Then we push," he addressed his captains, gathered through flickering hololinks across the fleet. "We no longer fight for survival alone. We fight to remind the galaxy what it means to stand when no one else will. We fight so that when history is written, humanity is remembered not as victims, but as fire." No captain objected. None even hesitated. They had seen too much already. The order went out. Operation Emberstorm. The first strike was swift. A silence. Carrier, massive as a city, drifted in orbit of a harvested world. Its crystalline frame gleamed in the faint light of a dying star. It did not move, did not transmit, merely hung like a predator that had already fed. Task Force Orion dropped. From FTL, every warship's engines burning hot. No demands were issued. No warnings given. Humanity had learned. Words meant nothing to the silence. The fleet moved as one, unleashing coordinated volleys. Missiles streaked through the void, railguns cracked with thunder, beams carved glowing, scars across the alien's crystalline hull. The carrier stirred, awakening like some ancient leviathan. Its response was merciless, lances of searing light that vaporized entire corvettes in an instant. But humanity did not flinch. They pressed harder, coordinated fire targeting the glowing cores that pulsed like beating hearts. Explosions rippled across the alien frame until, with a final blinding burst, the carrier shattered. Fragments spun across the void, scattering, like burning glass. For the first time in recorded history, a Silence capital ship fell. The galaxy would hear of it. News traveled faster than fleets. Across neutral channels, across whispered reports and illicit feeds, the story spread. The humans destroyed one of them, and something stirred. On a mining colony of the Drevians, dock workers gathered around a smuggled broadcast, cheering quietly into their fists. In the hidden enclaves of the Terran diaspora, old warriors raised toasts to the Terrans, mad enough to bite the hand of gods. Even within the council itself, young aides whispered behind closed doors, questioning if perhaps they had chosen cowardice over honor. Still, no fleets came, no offers of aid, no declarations of alliance. The galaxy watched from the shadows as humanity bled alone. The Silence, however, did not watch. They moved. Within weeks, 3 more human colonies fell. They came without warning, striking with mechanical precision, their ships emerging from nowhere. Settlements were wiped clean, populations erased. Entire star systems burned, human losses mounted. Each victory cost dearly, ships gone, crews buried in the void. The Silence adapted, their attacks more cunning, their weapons sharper. Every battle felt like a knife's edge, yet humanity did not falter. On Earth, factories roared to life. Old shipyards, long quiet, rang again with the hammer of construction. Veterans returned from quiet lives, donning uniforms once more. Families sent their sons and daughters willingly, not with fear, but with fury. It was no longer just defense, it was vengeance. Admiral Vey knew vengeance alone could not win. Humanity needed to understand what they faced. And so, Operation Emberstorm shifted. It was no longer enough to strike blindly. They needed answers. The chance came at Tyros IV. The Silence had begun harvesting the planet, their machines scouring its surface in perfect grids. But their fleet presence was light. Too light. For such a massive operation, Vey seized the opportunity. Task Force Orion struck, cutting through the thin defense line and capturing what had never been captured before. A Silence ship, intact. It was no easy task. Marines stormed its hull, fighting not living soldiers, but machines of glass and steel that moved like shadows. Blades of light cut through armor, metallic limbs crushed bone. But humanity was relentless, pushing corridor by corridor until the ship was theirs. What they found chilled every soul aboard. The ship's interior was not built for life. No crew, no command deck, no air. Its walls pulsed faintly, like living. Crystal and within its core lay a lattice that vibrated with alien energy. Engineers studied it, scientists probed it, but one truth became clear. The Silence were not a people. They were a plague, not conquerors, not empire, not even predators in the way life understood. They did not negotiate, did not speak, did not even recognize what they destroyed. They consumed, they erased, they moved on, and they were spreading. The revelation struck like a hammer. Humanity was not facing an enemy that could be reasoned with, bribed, or deterred. They were facing annihilation itself. Vey gathered his captains once more. His voice was grim, but steady. Now we understand. The galaxy turned its back because they feared this truth. They thought if they stayed silent, they would be spared. His gaze burned as he swept across their faces. But humanity does. not hide. Humanity does not beg. If the silence comes for us, then we will answer them the only way we know. He clenched his fist, voice rising into a roar. With fire. And so the fire spread. The humans did not retreat to their homeworld. They pushed outward, into the void, striking where the silence gathered, burning their fleets, shattering their machines. Each victory came at a price, but each price was paid willingly. For the first time, the galaxy saw a species that did not yield to inevitability. They had no allies. They had no counsel. They had only themselves and the fire they carried into the dark. But as the battles raged, one question haunted Admiral Vey. If the silence were spreading through the stars, where did they come from, and how much time did humanity have before the fire burned out? The void trembled. For months, humanity's fleets had struck like blades across the dark, each battle carving fire into the silence. Colonies were reclaimed, fleets shattered, their crystalline machines turned to drifting wreckage. Humanity had proven it could bleed them, could burn them. But Admiral Kalen Vey knew the truth. They were not winning. The silence did not retreat. They did not despair. Every fleet destroyed was replaced, every loss rebuilt. They were endless, a tide that rolled back with greater force after every battle. Humanity's victories, glorious as they were, bought only time, and time was running out. It was on the captured ship, still locked in a sealed hangar orbiting Mars, that the answer was found. Dr. Elira Kaios, chief of Xenotech Analysis, stood in the dim glow of the alien lattice, her face pale and drawn. She had spent weeks decoding the pulses of light, mapping the rhythms of energy. At last, she summoned Vey to see what she had uncovered. "It's not a ship," she said, her voice trembling with both awe and dread. "It's a fragment, a node. Every vessel, every machine. They're not independent, they're connected. All of them." Vey frowned. Connected to what? Her eyes lifted, reflecting the pulsing glow. To something larger, to something vast. A map unfolded in the hollow projector. At its center burned a single beacon of energy, buried deep in the Perseus Veil, a region of space long thought impassable. The source, the heart of the silence. "They are not an empire," Elira whispered. "They are a hive, and this is their core." The choice was brutal. Strike at the heart, and humanity might end the war, or be broken utterly. No other species would risk such an assault. No council fleet would march into the dark with them. Humanity stood alone, and yet there was no hesitation. Across Earth, the call went out. Shipyards poured steel into the void. Old freighters were refitted into gunboats, orbital platforms transformed into carriers, ancient vessels pulled from museums and reforged with new weapons. Every man and woman who could serve stepped forward. It was not just a fleet. It was an exodus of fire. They called it the Inferno Armada. When the fleet assembled, it stretched across the black like a constellation of defiance. Hundreds of warships, each scarred from battles past, each crew ready for one final stand. Admiral Vey stood on the Resolute's bridge, watching the glow of Earth below one last time. "This is not for survival," he said to his officers, his voice carrying across the fleet through encrypted channels. "This is for every colony that fell silent, for every ally who turned their back, for every world that believed humanity would fade quietly into the dark." He paused, eyes burning. "We will not fade. We will burn so bright that even the cowards who hid from this war will remember us. And when the silence is ash, they will know. Humanity answered with fire." The fleet roared its acknowledgement, engines lit. The Inferno Armada surged into the dark. The journey through the Perseus Veil was a nightmare. Nebulae of ionized gas shredded shields, storms of radiation hammered hulls. Ships disappeared into the haze, some lost forever, others limping onward with half their systems fried. But the fleet pressed on, and then, through the storm, they saw it, the core. It hung like a star that had swallowed its own light, a vast crystalline sphere pulsing with power, tendrils of energy stretching into the void. Around it swarmed fleets beyond counting, an ocean of silence vessels waiting with cold patience. The final battle began. The Armada charged. The void erupted in fury as human ships unleashed everything they carried. Missile swarms filled the dark. Like storms of fireflies, railguns cracked with thunder, plasma beams carved through the endless ranks of crystalline vessels. The silence answered with annihilation, their lances of searing light tearing through destroyers, corvettes, entire wings of carriers. But the Armada pressed on, cutting a path of fire through impossible odds. The Resolute led the charge, her guns blazing until their barrels glowed red, her shields screaming as they buckled under constant fire. Admiral Vey stood unmoving, his orders sharp, precise, unrelenting. Every ship that fell, every crew that burned, only drove the Armada deeper. Hold. "The line!" he roared. "Drive them back into their core!" And the Armada obeyed. The closer they came, the more the core revealed its nature. It was no mere structure. It was alive. Its crystalline lattice pulsed like a heart, waves of energy surging outward in rhythm. Every silence vessel moved to its beat, every strike coordinated with impossible precision. Dr. Kasa's voice crackled through the comms from her lab aboard a science vessel. "If we breach it, if we overload its lattice, the entire hive collapses. But you must strike deep, into the heart. Nothing else will matter." It was a suicide run. Vey knew it. Every captain knew it. And still, not a single ship turned back. The Armada split. Flanks drew the silence into brutal dogfights, buying precious minutes. Carriers launched their last wings, fighters diving like meteors into the dark. One by one, human ships fell, their names burning into memory, the Dauntless, the Iron Star, the Vigilant. The Resolute drove on, leading the spear. Hull ablaze, decks ruptured, she rammed through the silence lines until the core filled the sky. Vey stood tall on the bridge, lit by the glow of a dying star. "All ships converge," he commanded. "Pour everything you have into the heart!" And humanity obeyed. Every missile, every round, every beam screamed into the core. The lattice shook, fractures spreading across its crystalline skin. Light poured out, brighter and brighter, until the void itself seemed to burn. The core wailed, a soundless vibration that rattled through every hull, every bone, every soul. The silence faltered, ships shuddering, their coordination breaking. But the core held. Not enough. Not yet. The Resolute was dying. Fires tore through her decks, her reactors, overloading. Admiral Vey looked to his crew, bloodied but unbroken, their eyes locked on him. He knew what had to be done. "Prepare for ramming speed," he said quietly. The crew did not flinch, not a single protest. They set their course. Vey opened one final channel, broadcasting not just to the fleet, but to every open band in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Kalen Vey of Earth. To the council that turned away, to the allies that chose silence. Watch now. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not fade. When the void itself sought to erase us, we answered with fire. And we will burn until the last ember." He closed the channel, eyes fixed on the blazing core. Forward. The Resolute drove. Into the heart of the lattice. The impact was apocalyptic. The Resolute's reactors went critical, unleashing a chain reaction that tore through the core's crystalline veins. The fractures spread, light bursting outward in a blinding wave. Silent ships froze mid-maneuver, their connections severed. The hive screamed as its heart shattered, collapsing into shards that burned away into nothingness. The explosion consumed everything. Human ships, silence vessels, the core itself, until the void was silent once more. But this silence was different. This silence was victory. When the light faded, only wreckage remained. Of the Inferno Armada, a handful of ships drifted, battered, but alive. They carried the story home. The silence was broken. Humanity had won, and across the galaxy, no one dared look away any longer. Civilizations that had turned their backs now spoke in hushed reverence. The name of humanity carried weight, not as victims, not as survivors, but as fire itself. They had stood alone. They had burned brighter than any star, and they had answered the void with fire.